Table Talk by Martin Luther. Introduction. The history of this remarkable volume, almost as extraordinary as its contents, is thus given by Captain Bell. Written 3rd of July 1650. I, Captain Henry Bell, do hereby declare, both to the present age and also to posterity, being employed beyond the seas in state affairs divers years together, both by King James and also by the last King Charles in Germany, I did here understand in all places great bewailment and lamentations made by reason of the discovery and burning of above 80,000 of Martin Luther's books entitled His Last Divine Discourses. For after such time as God stirred up the spirit of Martin Luther to detect the corruptions and abuses of popery, and to preach Christ, and clearly to set forth the simplicity of the gospel, many kings and princes and states, imperial cities and hands towns fell from the popish religion and became Protestants, as their posterities still are and remain to this very day. And for the further advancement of the great work of Reformation then begun, the aforesaid princes and rest did then order that the said divine discourses of Luther should forthwith be printed, and that every parish should have and receive one of the aforesaid printed books into every church throughout all their principalities and dominions, to be chained up for the common people to read therein. Upon which divine work, or discourses, the Reformation began before in Germany, was wonderfully promoted and increased and spread both here in England and other countries besides. But afterwards it so fell out that the Pope, then living, viz. Gregory XIII, understanding what great hurt and prejudice he and his popish religion had already received by reason of the said Luther's divine discourses, and also fearing that the same might bring further contempt and mischief upon himself and upon the popish church, he therefore, to prevent the same, did fiercely stir up and instigate the empire then in being, viz. Rudolphus II, to make an edict throughout the whole empire that all the aforesaid printed books should be burnt, and also that it should be death for any person to have or keep a copy thereof, but also to burn the same, which edict was speedily put into execution accordingly, inasmuch that not one of all the said printed books, nor so much as any one copy of the same could be found out nor heard of in any place. Yet it pleased God that, Anno Domini 1626, a German Englishman named Caspar van Schaar, with whom in the time of my staying in Germany about King James's business, I became very familiarly known and acquainted with such occasion to build upon the old foundation of a house, wherein his great-grandfather dwelt at that time. When the said edict was published in Germany for the burning of the aforesaid books, and digging deep into the ground under the said old foundation, one of the said original books was there happily found, lying in a deep obscure hole, being wrapped in a strong linen cloth, which was waxed all over with beeswax, within and without, whereby the book was preserved fair without any blemish. And at the same time, Ferdinand II, being Emperor of Germany, who was a severe enemy and persecutor of the Protestant religion, and aforesaid gentleman and grandchild to him that had hidden the said books in an obscure hole, fearing that if the said emperor should get knowledge of one of the said books was yet forthcoming in his custody, whereby not only himself might be brought into trouble, but also the book in danger to be destroyed. As all the rest were so long before, and also calling me to mind and knowing that I had the High Dutch tongue very perfect, did send the said original book over hither to England unto me, and therewith did write unto me a letter, wherein he related the passages preserving and findings out the said book. And also he earnestly moved me in this letter that advancements of God's glory and of Christ's church, I would take the pains to translate the said book, to the end that that most excellent divine work of Luther might be brought again to light. Whereupon I took the said book before me, and many times began to translate the same, but always I was hindered therein, being called upon about other business, inasmuch that by no possible means I could remain by the work. Then about 6 weeks after I had received the said book, it fell out that I, being in bed one night between 12 and 1 o'clock, my wife being asleep, by myself yet awake, there appeared unto me an ancient man standing at my bedside, arrayed all in white, having a long and broad white beard hanging down to his girdled steed, who, taking me by my right ear, spake these words following unto me: Sire, will not you take time to translate that book which is sent to you out of Germany? I will shortly provide for you both time and space to do it. And then he vanished away out of my sight. Whereupon, being much thereby affrighted, I fell into an extreme sweat, inasmuch my wife waking and finding me all over wet, she asked me what ailed. I told her what I had seen and heard, but I never did heed nor regard visions nor dreams, and so the same fell soon out of my mind. Then about a fortnight after I had seen that vision, on Sunday, I went to Whitehall to hear a sermon, after which ended I returned to my lodgings, which was then at King Street at Westminster, and sitting down to dinner with my wife, 2 messengers came from the whole council board with a warrant to carry me to the keeper of the gatehouse, Westminster, there to be safely kept until a further order from the lords of the council, which was done without showing any cause at all wherefore. Footnote: the cause of the captain's commitment was his pressing the Lord's treasury for arrears of pay. Back to the text. At all wherefore I was committed, upon which said warrant I was kept 10 whole years close prisoner, where I spent 5 years thereof about the translating the said book, inasmuch I found the words very true which the old man in the aforesaid vision did say unto me, I will shortly provide for you both place and time to translate it. Then, after I had finished the said translation in the prison, the late Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. Lord, understanding that I had translated such a book called Martin Luther's Divine Discourses, sent unto me his chaplain, Dr. Bray, into the prison with this message following: Captain Bell, my Lord Grace of Canterbury hath sent me unto you to tell you that his Grace hath understood that you have translated a book of Luther's, touching which book his Grace many years before did hear of the burning of so many thousands in Germany by the then Emperor. His Grace, therefore, doth desire you that you should send unto him the said original book in Dutch, and also your translation, which after his Grace hath persuaded shall be returned safely to you. Whereupon I told Dr. Bray that I had taken a great deal of pains in translating the said book, and was very loath to part with it out of my hands, and therefore I desired him to excuse me of his Grace, that I could not part from it, with which answer at that time returned again to his master. But the next day after, he sent him unto me again, and bade him tell me that, upon his honour the book should be in safe custody, if not safer than in mine own, for he would lock it up in his own cabinet to the end no man might come to it, but only myself. Thereupon, I, knowing it would be a thing bootless for me to refuse such sending of them, by reason he was then of such great power, that he would have them nolens volens, I sent them both with him. Then, after he had kept them in his custody 2 months, and had daily read therein, he sent the said doctor unto me to tell me that I had performed the work worthy of eternal memory, and that he had never read a more excellent divine work, yet saying that some things therein were fitting to be left out, and desired me not to think long, that he did not return them unto me so soon again. The reason was because that the more he did read therein, the more desire he had to go on therewith, and so presenting me with 10 livers of gold, he returned back again. In which time I heard for certain that it was concluded by the king and council that a parliament should forthwith be called, at which news I did much rejoice. And then I sent unto his grace an humble petition, therein desired the returning of my book again. Otherwise, I told him, I should be enforced to make it known and to complain of him to the Parliament, which was then coming on. Whereupon he sent unto me again safely both the original book and my translation, and caused his chaplain and said doctor to tell me that he would make it known unto his majesty what an excellent piece of work I had translated, and that he would procure an order from his majesty to have the said translation printed and to be dispersed throughout the whole of the kingdom, as it was in Germany, as he had heard thereof. And thereupon he presented me again with 40 livers of gold. And presently after I was set at liberty by warrant from the whole House of Lords, according to his Majesty's direction on that behalf. But shortly afterwards the bishop fell into his troubles, and was by the Parliament sent to the Tower, and afterwards beheaded, inasmuch I could never since hear anything touching the printing of my book. The House of Commons was having then notice that I had translated the aforesaid book. They sent for me, and did appoint a committee to see it, and the translation, and diligently to make inquiry whether the translation did agree with the original or no. Whereupon they desired me to bring the same before them, sitting then in the Treasury Chamber. The said Edward Deering, being chairman, said unto me that he was acquainted with a learned minister, Boniface in Essex, who had lived long in England, but was born in High Germany in the Palatinate, named Mr. Paul Amoret, whom the committee, sending for, desired him to take both the original and my translation into his custody, and diligently to compare them both, and to make report unto the said committee whether he found that I had rightly and truly translated it according to the original, which report he made accordingly. And they, being satisfied therein, referred it to 2 of the assembly, Mr. Charles Harrell and Mr. Edward Corbett, desiring them diligently to pursue the same, and to make report unto them if they thought it fitting to be printed and published. Whereupon they made report, dated the 10th of November, 1646, that they found it to be an excellent divine work, worthy the light and publishing, especially in regard that Luther, in the said discourses, did revoke his opinion which he formerly had touching consubstantiation in the sacrament. Whereupon the House of Commons, the 24th of February, 1646, did give order for the printing thereof. Thus, having been lately desired to set down in writing the relation of these passages above, said concerning the said book, as well for the satisfaction of judicious and godly Christians, as for the conservation of the perpetual memory of God's extraordinary providence in the miraculous preservation of the aforesaid divine discourses, and now bringing them again to light, I have done the same according to the plain truth thereof, not doubting but that they prove a notable advantage of God's glory, and the great and the good and edification of the whole church, and an unspeakable consolation of every particular member of the same, given under my hand the 3rd day of July 1650. Henry Bell.